So here's a fun video I'd do. It was kind of one that was rattling around in my head because I haven't really done a Star Wars video, nor have I done a Warhammer video in a bit. And I was like, you know what? I want to do both. So yes, we're going to be talking about a pretty, I would say, controversial subject. That being, could the Imperium of Man conquer, or rather defeat, the Galactic Empire? So the Imperium versus the Empire, a Star Wars Warhammer. What would that be like? So let's say the Imperium of Man has declared war and is now moving in on the Galactic Empire. Let's not get into semantics of how the Imperium got here. Now, the Imperium of Man and the Galactic Empire have one thing in common. Well, two things in common, I should say. They both are predicated on war. Their whole structure is based on, we are here to smash your head in and take your planet for the glory of humanity. Xenos be damned. That's kind of one thing. The other thing is they really have numbers. They have massive amount of their military is predicated on massive amount of numbers. But that's really where things deviate, because the Imperium and the Empire really have a very divergent look at war. So let me explain. Now let's talk about the big thing in the room. The Imperium has a major edge on their side, or a few edges on their side. Of course, the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. They have those Space Marines, and there's really no other unit in the Galactic Empire that Palpatine can really throw at them. Vader can't be everywhere at once, and Vader could get overwhelmed by several Astartes. Although I have seen in a lot of, although it was Dark Horse, so it isn't really canon, but I would believe Disney would still keep this power set for Vader, that the Empire, Vader, tongue-tied, Vader's pretty powerful and has been seen taking on entire legions of soldiers. Now, could he handle himself against a whole war, battle patrol, combat patrol, of Space Marines? I think it's possible. And this is Imperium now. This is the Imperium. We're talking, when we're talking about this scenario, we're talking about the current Imperium. So the only Primarch the Imperium have is Rabute Guilliman. So imagine it's the Indominus Crusade, or something of that akin. So Rabute is the only one, and Lion is still lost, so we can't count him. But yeah. So, the only Primarch that's leading the Imperium in this battle, it would be Rabute Guilliman. And Guilliman is a master strategist. Even like Horus said, yeah, the one guy I would want to have at my side planning these battles would have been Rabute. But that's the thing, is that Guilliman's a master strategist, and if anyone's going to be, leading this charge into the Galactic Empire, it's gotta be Guilliman. But on the other end of that board, you got some serious competition. Not just Vader and the Inquisitors, who can't be everywhere at once, but the other side of that, you have, great strategists such as, Tarkin, you have Monty, you have Tag. They're all pretty smart. They are arrogant, but they're still there. You have, of course, Thrawn. You have, of course, Palpatine himself, mastermind of the entire Empire. You have a shit ton of master strategists. But the difference is, outside of Vader and the Inquisitors, and sometimes Palpatine, if the need calls for it, and Thrawn, a lot of those guys are sitting back in ships, commanding the scene. Whereas, Rabute, if the need calls for it, he will be down there leading the Imperium and Astartes into battle. And again, like I said, the Empire unit-wise doesn't really have something to combat that. Now, if a stormtrooper and guardsman regiments encounter one another, I kind of I know we all laugh at the thought of stormtroopers can't shoot for shit, but that's really plot armor. So we have seen that stormtroopers in a good enough number, much like guardsmen, can be a big threat. I'm talking about books and whatnot. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, if it's not in the movies, then it doesn't count. Well, a lot of people get their lore from, not the tabletop, but the codex and books from Warhammer, so I don't want to hear shit. I can play this. We can play that game too. And I'm not saying this as like, I'm not trying to be a Star Wars nutty hugger. I'm just like looking at it a military standpoint. Now, like I said, the other thing that the Empire... now, getting back on topic, the war in the world of Warhammer... I mean, yeah, let's talk about Warhammer. The big problem, and this is going to be a detriment to them, is that the biggest problem with Warhammer is that while they're all cool and while it's all grimdark and shit, the problem is it's like the Space Age Dark Ages. They're using technology that they barely understand and barely have any use for, and when it's gone, they can't build it again, or very rarely build it again. Whereas the Galactic Empire, they are constantly forging ahead. They are always looking to build the next big thing to fucking kill the person who upset them. And that's the big thing, is that whereas the Imperium needs forge worlds, the Empire don't need that. They have planets that are built for industry, but they also have thousands of shipyards that are well hidden and well placed across the the Galactic Empire, and even in unknown regions that were only known to a few people. And to give you a perspective as to how big the Galactic fleet was, at the end of the Galactic Civil War, the Empire had 200,000 Star Destroyers, and counting. Whereas the Imperium, they do have ships that are massive compared to a Star Destroyer, but they don't have. But they only have those in few numbers. So if they lose those ships or can't get them back to like somewhere like a Forge world, then guess what? It's gone. They can't build that again. They have no. They have limited resources or no resources to rebuild it. Whereas the Empire, if it's broke, fine, we'll build it again. We got the manpower. We got all that. I think people seem to misunderstand, and don't get me wrong, I love Warhammer. But I think a lot of people, just because they have Space Marines, and Space Marines are going to be a major point of this battle scenario, I think people forget that everything else in the Empire is kind of broke shit, or it's barely eligible counts as like advanced technology. The Empire's always like constantly upgrading itself, and like I said, they don't need they have planets, but at the same time they have thousands of shipyards and thousands of hidden shipyards. Not to mention, each one of those Star Destroyers are more than capable of containing hundreds of ships, of small fighters, that could easily be flying across the coast or, along the planet's surface to hold and destroy, like, any drop pods or any, like, ships that can be, that need to go down to the planet for assistance or support. So they could just be flying around like gnats, keeping that, all under control. So, and the Empire's really good at blockades. They are really good. They've mastered that. Now, ground combat, it's much different. Like I said, your basic stormtrooper, or even like your finest like commandos, they ain't gonna do shit against a Space Marine. I do think that the weapons they carry are on par with probably a las gun, and could deal some damage to that armor, but it's not getting through. But there aren't a lot of Space Marines are few and far between. I know the current thing is that Space Marines are everywhere, but there are the Imperium. There are worlds the Imperium who think the Space Marines are angels. They think they're like fucking Bigfoot. If they see one, there are times where they'll see a Space Marine and be like, "Holy shit, you're real." Yeah. So, but Space Marines will definitely play a part in these battles. But like I said with Vader and the Inquisitors, there's a problem where the Space Marines can't be everywhere in a galaxy-wide war between the Imperium and the Empire. There's a big thing you have to really address. Now, the Imperium does have technology, tanks and whatnot. No, I don't care how big an AT-AT can get. They are nowhere near the size of maybe some Imperial Knights, but there are some Titans that would just step on an AT-AT. But like I said, the Empire, and this is a rule in war, in any kind of war, is that it doesn't matter how many units you have. if you cannot keep up manufacturing-wise with your army, it's not gonna matter. Like, that's how, you know, America beat down Japan, is that we were just out manufacturing tanks and weapons and everything else. And I know a lot of people were gonna say, like, what about, you know, Vietnam? That different other thing altogether. But I'm talking, like, if you clashed two empires together, you know, when you saw Japan and the US, you know, battling it out, you saw that, like, in the war, even though Japan was still trying to keep going, it was very clear they needed those resources, and America could just keep chugging along and keep building and advancing in terms of technology. And that's what I kind of see here, is that while I do see that the Imperium would definitely probably take a few worlds, their manufacturing-wise, it's gonna be hard to do. Whereas the Empire, we've got tons of people we can just recruit or conscript, and we can just keep building Star Destroyers. Oh, did I mention the Super Star Destroyers? Or, I don't know, since we are talking like this is the Empire in its golden age, how about the fucking Death Star? You know, although that is kind of cheating, but still, I'm sure someone will bring up a lot of the planet-killing tech, like the virus bombs, which I do think a few virus bombs are probably going to put the Empire in a bit of a tizzy, to say the least. But I will say that, like, once the Empire figures out, hey, they kind of need these Forge Worlds to keep working, I'm pretty sure, and the Empire loves to play dirty, so I do imagine that they'll just drop out of hyperspace with their Star Destroyers and start glassing a Forge World and then bounce. That's another thing they have that is an edge against the Imperium. Whereas they need to travel through the warp, the Immaterium, and that's dangerous in of itself. The Empire doesn't need to do that. They can just hyperspace travel, and they can hit and run hundreds of several worlds at a time. I mean, it would take a while to, like, charge up, but, like, in that span of time, if it's like a massive campaign, they could be jumping armadas of Star Destroyers and support units across several Forge Worlds, cripple or absolutely just decimate them, and then bounce before the Imperium has a chance to even, like, get word to it. They'll probably get word through Psychers, but that's kind of a big thing, is that they'll have the Empire has speed on their side. It's really hard to it is really hard to, like, pin down how exactly to, like, talk about this, because ground combat is much different than space combat. On ground combat, I do see that the Empire would slowly learn we can't fight them on the ground. Like, fighting them on the ground is gonna be next to it's just going to be a bloody stalemate at best, or a massacre once the Space Marines or the Titan Legions show up, or, you know, and I'm not even talking about the other Guardsman Regiment. Like, if they have to fight, like, have to hold ground against the Death Corps of Krieg, or go on, like, Felucia and battle the Katakan Jungle Warriors, or the other Guardsman Regiments, it's gonna be a long, bloody fight at best. Space combat, like Navy-wise, it's a much different story, in my opinion. Where the Empire, they were masters of space. They were the masters of space combat, of, like, ship-to-ship combat, much like a Galactic British Empire. And I know, yeah, they're also the kings of arrogance. Looking at you, original trilogy Empire, but still, I digress. Is that you're going to see a war of two different fronts, where the Empire would slowly realize that our ships may be smaller compared to their massive battle cruisers, but they really have nothing that can, like, catch us in speed or firepower. So that's a major thing. A war of attrition on planets, but a war that they could easily, like, outmaneuver and outmanufacture. But do I think the Imperium could hold the line and actually defeat the Galactic Empire? I think it is possible. I do think the Imperium... One thing that the other races of the Warhammer universe have learned is that the Imperium can be really, really stubborn. They are some stubborn motherfuckers, when it comes to fighting. And if you fight them in a long enough, drawn-out war, they're more than likely going to, like, you know, wear you out. That's how a lot of their battles goes. It's not through, like, a blitzkrieg like the Empire does. They just, like, hold the ground and then just wear you out. So the Empire, like, it's, again, two different military doctrines as well, where you have the Empires, like, hit hard, hit fast, and then, you know, put them under your boot as fast as possible. Whereas the Imperium is, no, we can drag this out. We got 90,000 soldiers on reserve. We can do this for a couple, like, 12 more years. So it's definitely going to change how the Empire fights. But again, space-wise, and again, once the Empire figures out that they can just take out Forge Worlds and cripple the Imperium, it's a different ballgame. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Do you think the Imperium of Man, could defeat the Galactic Empire? Just comment below, let me know. I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say about this one. Just comment below, let me know. And once again, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.